Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for starting your day with us here again on Western Spring Television. The program is Morning Spring, where we bring you in-depth analysis of issues happening all around you. Femi Olanipeku is my name. It's 48 hours after the election, results trickling in some 24, 48 hours more, Nigerians should know who the next president of the Federal Republic is.
Oh, well, yes, we should know who will be piloting the affairs of this country for the next 4 years. It's been a grueling 24 hours, 48 hours. Voters went to the polls to cast their ballots, and people in charge of the process, the electoral umpires, have been up and doing since that Saturday trying to get results. And some results have been coming in, of course, like I said. Some states have been declared, and some persons now know their fate. Talking about the other positions in terms of the legislative elections, some persons now know where their fate lies. And it will be interesting in the coming days to see other results being announced. But particularly, Nigerians are waiting to know who the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces will be for the next 4 years. Thank you so much. My name is Emmanuel Ojadigele. Good morning and welcome to the show this morning.
Yes, welcome to the show this morning, the Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. I am Temitope Ajijola Oluwala.
Well, so not only Nigerians electing the president, also electing parliamentarians, members of the National Assembly, the 109 seats in the Senate, the about 460 seats really in the House of Representatives. Some of the results are coming in, and a big upset here and there. We'll be talking about all of that today. We'll be bringing you up to speed about some of the results. The only result that we cannot give you now is who is the next president, but then we pretty much know many of the winners of the parliament, who those will be sitting as representatives of the people. Here in our show, we'll be looking at how the election, went. Emmanuel, you hear him sounding groggy. He's really on the field all since Saturday, and then everyone here, but just had to come again. This morning to serve you what we do best. So we'll be sharing his experience on the field. He'll be giving us first-hand information on some of the other results. It was at the State Collation Center here yesterday, filling us in on the results. And the result for Osun, the presidential election, has been called. So we know who won Osun State. We're talking about looking at the dynamics of how that compare to what we have at the last election, the governorship election. There's some tweaks here and there, and then we'll see more of that on the program. But let's take a break. When we return, we'll bring you the newspapers. All right, the papers now. Let's start with the Punch newspaper. It's about the election. Expectedly, that's what all of the papers we have for review here today. With the Punch newspaper, election 2023 results. Tinubu wins Ekiti. Atiku tops in Osun. Labour Party cries foul. But the riders, INEC explains IREF hitches. Continues collation today. Tinubu wins Ogun, Ekiti, Oyo, leads in Borno, 4 state. Atiku wins Osun, leads in 3 states. Obi shines in Lagos, Edo, others. That's the lead story of the Punch newspaper. Interesting results, and some of them not unexpected. Yes. But then some of them also like if you what's happening here, you see Tinubu winning in Ogun, Ekiti, or Oyo. I don't know even though has been called yet. No, but then Atiku won in Osun, but by the projection it appears that Atiku is only winning in Osun. Many people projected Tinubu to win the entire Southwest before.
Yes. And that's part of the dynamics, like you said, of this year's election. The voting patterns really changed. And you could begin to point our fingers at some of those facts, some of the factors that could have, swung the voting pattern. But here in Osun State, it's always been APC having the upper hand, and then especially in the build-up to the elections, There were some sort of assurance that the APC had. They were, of course, buoyed by the tribunal judgment on the governorship election. And it seemed as though they were going, people were banding figures around, will win by over 1 million votes, will win by this and that.
You should know that those are just political statements. They know that it's not grounded in reality. Because even the total voting population, if you check from 1999, we will never move close. If you check, add all the figures together.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see. We'll do the analysis later, but to see Atiku win Osun State by very slim margin, about 23 or 25,000 votes, really. But then in other states, it will be shining in Lagos. It's quite interesting, because it didn't give him a chance in the presidential candidate of the APC, and the upset coming out of Lagos. Edo was also expected to swing because the governor of Edo State, Governor Obaseki, at some point said he was worried that the obedient, as they are called, were taking over the state, in terms of politics. But Lagos is where it's interesting.
That Lagos, shining in Lagos does not mean he's winning.
No, it doesn't mean he's winning. It means he's shining. I mean, if you go to your opposition stronghold and you get results from, I saw some of the results that were declared around Oshodi or thereabout. If an OB can get votes at polling unit in Oshodi, call Lagos now. He deserves his flowers.
It's some very impressive showing, perhaps maybe better than anticipated.
Yes.
But it should also be stressed that Lagos has not been called yet.
Yes.
But it will be totally unexpected now if Obi now wins or gets about 40% of the votes in Lagos. The shocker for me is actually the PDP now finishing this time third
in most of
those places in Lagos, and even outside of Lagos. If you check what's happening in Kano also, then in the PP, coasting, and when you see the APC running neck and neck with them, is the PDP that's also finishing third. So we get to see today more results coming from the north, to be able to do some more projections of what really is happening there. But interesting now. We cannot, talk less of the challenges, that this election in terms of logistics problems, and Osun seems to be an outlier. Osun seems to be the only place where we had, fairly good logistics.
Although there were issues yesterday, sorry to cut you short. There were issues yesterday during the collation. The INEC rec said that there was something that went wrong, and he didn't go into details, but it felt to me like there was some sort of violence and people were not able to move. The officers, now the officials, so it took the effort of security agencies for them to be able to leave Iwo. But then generally, at some level of peace, most of the that were cancelled in Osun State were cancelled because of overvoting and not necessarily because of violence. There were pockets of violence, but then across the country, there's been so many issues, even with INEC itself, with the voting and voters, the IREV not coming up on time, the result not being uploaded. It further lent some sort of voice to the questions people have been asking about INEC's preparedness and stuff like that.
Yes, I was rather disappointed, with INEC and even some security agencies, because built up to the election, there were lots of promises from INEC, but the logistics problem was not expected. And seeing that across the country, not just in a place, was really saddening, and it's quite a lot of disappointment.
Well, the collation continues today. INEC took a break last night to continue collation by 11 a.m. today. And so we'll be getting more results from different states, local government and all of that. Apart from the ones that have been called, you can see the picture down on the Punch newspaper there, the collation center. But interestingly, yesterday also, when the results began trickling in, some, unlike what we've been seeing, some of the stakeholders in the parties have been calling for they will accept it, but then that's that on the Punch newspaper, that banner headline there about the election. We also want to see that the election was heavily policed in some areas of the country. We'll get to that later. Well, that story is on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Now below that, NDLEA arrest 3 grandpas. If you want to know why they were arrested, you can check page 4 of the Punch newspaper. And then still talking about the election, Lagos police arrest 23 suspects for electoral offences on page 5. Yesterday at the INEC Collection Center in Osun State, the Rec Mutia Agboke was asking the FCC officials if they arrested anyone for vote buying, and the EFCC representative said they had quite a number. That was how he put it, quite a number of suspects. And different other electoral offenses. In some part of the state, some persons were arrested for fomenting trouble. But now in Lagos, having just 23 suspects for electoral offenses, I don't know if that number is reflective of what actually happened yesterday.
Exactly.
Most of the mainstream media reported some disturbing level of infractions in terms of violence, intimidation, and other issues. But then it's good. It's a good start.
Yeah, it is. And I would expect that the follow-up to this will be names of those suspects now, especially if they have been confirmed to be culpable in the offense.
Yes.
A particularly striking one is the one beside the nameplate about some of those who lost and those who won. The Senate spokesperson was representing these very area, Ajibala Bashiru and Biodun Olujimi of Ekiti State lost their seats. So Bashiru is of the APC, Olujimi is of the PDP. And interestingly, Daniel and Bamidele, that's from Ekiti. No,
Bamidele, yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
So that's Senator Bamidele, Okoyemi Bamidele also won. So the headline, Senate spokesperson Olujimi lose seats, Daniel Bamidele win. I mean, interesting. We'll get more of these. The picture will be clearer, and maybe we'll get some other. So some also very, very shocking results from Cross River and also from Benue State. But when we lay our hands on it, we will let you into that. But that's about some of those who have won and some of those who have lost. And in Kaduna State, El-Rufai is running against election result protest. Some people have been crying blue mud. I mean, so you also see some of the comments and conversations, akin to political naivety, when you see at some level of ignorance. So some people expect winning, I'm not good there. Some people expect winning a particular state means that you have won the entire election.
Yes.
No, I mean, the way this country is configured, even if you win the entire South, you've not won.
Yes.
Perhaps the best explanation one can make is look at the 2011 Jonathan victory map. So for him to become president, he won the entire South, the 3 zones in the South, and then the North Central. And the South, Osun was an outlier. Osun voted for Nuhu Ribadu that year, but then he pretty much won most of the other parts of in terms of zones, he won the Southwest, the South, and the Southeast, and then he added the North Central. That's a victory path. The other victory path was Muhammadu Buhari winning the Northeast, the Northwest, and then adding the Southwest to it. These are heavy populated voting blocks. So winning just one state because you have pockets of supporters here, it doesn't work that way. And so
I think one of the things that really marked this year's elections was the level of political naivety, ignorance, like you said, and disinformation. I mean, a lot of persons, I was going through social media yesterday, and I saw a lot of persons asking, what does it mean to win by 25%? If he does this, will he do? You can't go into an election where you have a dog in the fight and not understand the dynamics of the election. That's why people are easy to say we're rigged out. They're quick to say we're rigged out. Say we would. No, sometimes you have to see that. In fact, numbers do not translate to victories. Sometimes, yet we know about simple majority, but there's a spread angle to the election. So all of these things, I was discussing with some of the party people at the Coalition Center yesterday. And one of the parties, I can't mention the name now, was talking about how they made the mistake of not really talking to their people and letting them know. I mean, some persons didn't even know going into the election that there will be 3 ballot papers. They were asking, so on which of the ballot papers these are things that would even disenfranchise your own party members. So it speaks to the fact that for political parties, there's more focus on wresting power from each other than even educate. I don't know how many political parties have a voter education directorate or something, to give people the information that this is how you vote, this is what you do, implications of certain actions, these are the dynamics of the election. You can't win 2 states, you can't win 1 state and say because there's a large number of votes from that particular state, you've won the entire election. No, there, like you said, there's a path. There's an arithmetic path to winning the election, and you must fulfill all of those requirements. So it's important that Rufai is calling for calm and saying, because I've seen some of the very dangerous rhetorics, and so very, very dangerous, I must say, and those statements have no place in our electoral system. People talking about how they would, very, very disgusting and not so unwholesome statements that could incite, the public to cause chaos. So it's good, whatever the result of the election is, let's explore the legal means of expressing displeasure.
All right. So, we'll be going on so that we can get our guest, one of our guests will be joining us shortly for a few minutes via Zoom to talk to us. But it's interesting how Daily Independent, I crafted its own headline this morning. It is talking more about the process itself. INEC roundly criticized over Saturday's shambolic election. That's in quotes, shambolic. With a number of riders there, Ohaneze asked electoral umpire to respect the will of the people. Rights groups warn of consequences of rigging presidential poll. CSOs expressed concern over slow uploading of election results. INEC blames slow uploading of results on technical hitches. That's the Daily Independent newspaper. There a lot has been said about how polls started late in many places. Like I said, if you judge by the experience here in Osun, it's totally different from the national average. And Bukola Idowu, the ED of KDI, who said it deployed over 1,127 observers across the nation, said that Osun situation is deceptive.
Yes.
When you judge by Osun, you feel everything is all right, and you go national, and then you see that we are not ready at all.
That's true. We're on the field, and as early as 7 o'clock, past 7, people were at the polls. They were waiting, already arranging themselves on queues, and INEC officials were there. And the election. So if you want to judge, by Osun State, you might be deceived into saying, something dangerous was changed or shifted somewhere. But the difference is that for some states, actually, not just Osun, somehow things just go the way they should. Elections, polls open at the right time, the machines function, everything goes smoothly. But then the criticism, it's really, really important that people begin to speak up. I've seen some statements, I've seen some official and unofficial statements. I've seen some individuals who participated in the process saying that they've never seen this before, perhaps because of the electronic angle to the election with the use of beavers. But INEC made promises.
Yes.
And that's where it's worrisome.
Exactly. So now it may not be about the election results, but the process. The process could ultimately alter the result. So people would not be protesting now because of the result, even though it's the result, but more about the process. Several people were disenfranchised even to now. Yes, some people were not able to vote because of some technical issues or logistic problems. And
so it becomes easy for those people to say that they were rigged out and that the process was not free and fair.
Yes.
And that's why persons have said that if we're not ready for certain things, we shouldn't do it. If you know that we've not matured to the point of, using electronic transmission of results, we could continue to show up what we have until we have a solid base. But I saw a lot of criticisms across all the political parties, for INEC's performance on Saturday, especially in the uploading of the result. INEC told people that as soon as the results are being collated, you can log into IREV and see the result. But for some reasons, it was not working. You couldn't see anything. And it will give room to conspiracy theories. And that's my worry. when people are allowed to come up with conspiracy theories, there is so much you can do to dispel those theories. The Yoruba say that it is the people who hear the first part of an argument most often don't hear the second part. You know, when people raise alarm that they've sabotaged the process, the number of persons who will listen to our next explanation will be minute compared to those who already have the impression.
Even they have access to the explanation.
Turn it up! It's the Wild Wild West, and Western Spring Television is pulling out all the stops to make sure that you don't miss out on every of the fun and happenings around you. Yup, we've got you covered because your girl got all the juiciest tidbits and entertainment news from around the world. Cross over to the chocolatey side of entertainment. Join me, Chocolate Cassie, on Eccentric as we take you into every bit of the juiciest news, fashion, music, movie updates, and other trending conversations. Together on the show, we'll get personal with your favorite celebrities via phone call, Zoom, or even live here in the studio. Eccentric will be shown on your TV screen on Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on StarTimes.
Here are 5 amazing fun facts I bet you never knew about Christianity.
Number 1, there are over 2.4 billion Christians worldwide.
Amazing fun fact number 2. The Bible is one of the best-selling books of all time, with more than 100 million copies sold every year.
Most Christians believe in heaven and hell.
The Bible is the most translated book in the world, with more than 3,000 languages.
Amazing fun fact number 5. Most Christians throw science out of the window without realizing that most scientists are Christians. Hello, I am Pastor Steve Akinwumi.
And I am Dr. Adeoye Oyewole.
Join us as we highlight and discuss day-to-day issues pertaining to the day-to-day living of every Christian.
Issues in Christendom shows every Sunday on Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on StarTimes.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever is pounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission. Even diffusion. Vast and fast. Detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
The 1914 Amalgamation Treaty is synonymous to the birth of Nigeria. Frederick Lugard, a British Army captain and an outlaw, who struck gold in Africa became the instrument used by destiny to make it happen. The amalgamation of Nigeria was designed for economic reasons by the colonial administration to offset Northern Protectorate budget deficit by Southern Protectorate surplus returns. The amalgamation had ab initio created imbalance in the economic political structure of Nigeria and was responsible for the persistent hiccups in the efforts to forge a united country till today. Nigeria's amalgamation was labeled as the mistake of 1914 by native northern conservatives who neither wanted it nor contributed anything significant to its sustenance. Western Spring Television identifies with Amalgamation Treaty of 1914 as a watershed event in history. Western Spring Television, ours it is. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white supremacists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever expounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast. Detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Dramatist, playwright, and icon of Yoruba thematic arts, Duro Ladipo was born December 18, 1931 in Osogbo, southwest Nigeria. his clergyman father christened him Timothy. His other names, Duro Dola, Duro Shomo, Duro Rike, reflected his persona and the circumstances that surrounded his birth. The legendary stage actor had in several public fora identified himself as one of the greatest abikus born to die in this world. Family records reveal how he was born and died 13 times. The intertwining names he bore thus lent credence to his spiritism. Duro Ladipo was one of the best known and world-acclaimed Yoruba dramatists to emerge from post-colonial Africa. His notable works Obakoso, Obawaja and Moremi took him beyond Africa to several parts of the world. By the time Duro Ladipo died on 11 March 1978, the Nigeria's first cultural ambassador had acquired a towering image as an artist whose works adorned the frontage of Trenchard Hall, University of Ibadan. Western Spring Television identifies Duro Ladipo as a major character in history. It was a Euro-American trade in slaves by which 12.5 million Africans were captured from their indigenous homelands and transported via the Atlantic to Europe and the Americas. The transatlantic slave, also known as triangular trade, was the worst form of man's inhumanity to man and the most costly in human life of all long-distance global migrations. Hundreds of Africans chained tightly to plank beds in the belly of slave ships in horrific conditions were transported via the Atlantic and stripped of all human dignity on arrival in Europe and America. It is the greatest crime the Caucasians committed against the black race. It is impossible to discuss the transatlantic slave trade without a copious reference to impoverishment and underdevelopment of Africa and its peoples. The triangular trade left the continent in ruins. Western Spring Television identifies transatlantic slave trade as a watershed event in history. Civil engineer, surveyor and architect. Born on November 14, 1864, Herbert Macaulay was the founder of Nigeria's National Democratic Party the first political party in pre-independent Nigeria. Scholars of Nigeria's political history describe Herbert Macaulay as the intellectual bulldog of 19th century Nigerian nationalist movement, in the deference to his qualities as founder and leader of two foremost political parties, Nigeria National Democratic Party (NNDP) and National Council of Nigerian Citizens (NCNC). His matchless versatility in party organization and control kept the British colonialists on their toes in the entire span of his active life. After his death on 7th May 1946, Herbert Macaulay
Thank you very much for staying with us. Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, WSTV, where we bring it to you as it is. Well, here now we'll be joined shortly live on the line by our guest to help us make a sense of some of the developments in the election. Moshood Issa is the communications officer of YEGA Africa. He's an election observer and will be helping us to have an understanding of how the polls have been so far. INEC's preparedness, has it really translated to electoral and logistic success, really, in terms of the coordination and management of this election? Moshood, if you are with us, thank you so much for joining us. Hello, good morning, Moshood. If you can hear me.
Hi, I can hear you. Good morning.
Thank you. How are you? I know it must be very stressful for you, as it would, pretty much election observers conducted by INEC on Saturday.
Well, I think we missed an opportunity to improve our electoral process. We missed an opportunity to boost citizens' confidence in the process. I think this electoral commission had overwhelming support from especially civil society organizations, with the push for the passage of the Electoral Act, electronic transmission, and other form of support that the Commission had recommended to improve the electoral process. But the first negative feedback we got was, or negative observation we saw was delay in arrival of electoral materials in virtually every part of the country. This after the fact that the Commission has continued to repeat readiness for the elections. Civil society organizations had raised concerns about the scarcity of naira and how it will impact on the elections. But the Commission had said they had met with the Central Bank of Nigeria, and then they had given their awards going into the election. A few days to the election, we did not hear any major complaint around preparation. But unfortunately, on election day, there are delay in arrival of election materials and personnel to polling, which overwhelmingly affected commencement of polls and even announcement of results. But beyond that, the election will also be bedeviled by also other forms of irregularities that we thought we had overcome.
Well, so, for you, this will be like some steps back compared to what we had in 2019. Is that it?
Yeah, I think the Commission has fallen short of expectations. We had a lot of improvements in our Electoral Act from 2019 till now. The process is supposed to get better. Well, I do not think it has gotten better. I think it's another missed opportunity. And we're falling short of expectations. Despite the consistent promises, the new innovations, and the fact that civil society organizations have invested a lot in boosting citizens' confidence in the electoral process and in the Commission itself. If we have done that, then we have to hold the Commission accountable for any irregularity or shortfalls. There are locations where electoral materials were not even complete. There are locations where the beavers did not function. Then at that 10 p.m., there were no results that were uploaded on the result viewing portal. This is defeating the aim of transparency that we are hoping for in this electoral process.
All right, Mr. Issa, what do you make of all of this thing now and its potential for casting aspersions on the credibility of the polls after all the results have been announced?
Well, either ways, you know, civil society can only speak about the process, the quality of the process, and the Nigeria Africa can only verify if the results that were released are consistent with the votes cast in the polling units. But again, the Commission has a huge responsibility to ensure that the election is credible. Political parties who have a major stake in the election can decide to take action if they have substantial evidence to prove that the election does not fulfill the yearning and aspiration of voters, or does not reflect votes cast in the polling units. So this is not in a way to cast aspersion on the credibility, but from our observation, from what we've seen, the process does not meet up with the expectation of Nigerians.
All right, so okay, don't finish up your sentence.
Yeah, and of course, and in some cases, we notice violation of Electoral Act in some locations. There are locations in Lagos and Ogun State where security agencies were practically watching to see that citizens actually vote for a particular political party. That is a violation of secrecy of ballots.
All right, so I was going to ask you about Lagos actually, and some of the videos and comments that have come out from Lagos. Do you think that at this point in our democracy and in our electoral growth, that some of these issues should still be happening? There were cases where ballot boxes and papers were burnt. There were places, like you just said, where security officials were used to repress voters. You know, all of these things, should they still be happening in this age and time?
It's 24 years into our electoral democracy. I would believe that the new innovations that have been introduced to our elections should make all these issues around ballot box snatching, burning of ballot box and all that, should make it inconsequential, because only results that are guaranteed to have followed through all the electoral guidelines and processes should be accepted at the end. And if elections are cancelled due to overvoting or snatching of ballot boxes, if the margin of lead between the first and the second is less than the total number of registered voters or PVC collected in those locations where elections are cancelled, then we go back to the polls. At the moment, we should not be seeing incidents like this. We expect that our elections, our democracy should have come of age, at least to a reasonable extent. There is the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, co-chaired by the Inspector General of Police and the INEC chairman. I expected they have mapped hotspots, locations, and strategies on how to prevent incidents like this. If this keeps happening, then I think we have a long way to go in our electoral democracy.
All right, so I mean, Mr. Issa, you talked about the huge expectations of the Nigerian people, how much support was given to the election management body, and then what we have on Saturday. What factors would you say are responsible for this underperformance from INEC? Is it because of, you know, maybe INEC was not forthcoming or was not giving us the true picture of the impact of the cash crisis on them, or because they are new to the Electoral Act, or because we have some new regs that were appointed just a few months ago?
So two things. I think we underestimated our challenges and we overestimated our capacities. Again, we also know that the Electoral Act was signed exactly 1 year ago, on 25th February 2022. And we know the key provisions that were supposed to impact on this election. So we cannot talk about the Electoral Act because it was also piloted in the Ekiti and Osun election. We piloted the use of beavers, we piloted the use of IRF, we piloted the key provisions provisions of the Electoral Act in Ekiti and Osun. I know the INEC chairman is one person. We have resident electoral commissioners in 36 states and FCT. Even though civil society organizations have raised concerns about the neutrality of some of the resident electoral commissions in some states. Most of these reps were nominated by politicians. We gave examples of some states that I don't want to mention at the moment. But then this would also have impacted on the conduct of the polls, because the INEC chairman is just one person. We have 36 or 37 resident electoral commissioners. You cannot vouch that all of them are politically neutral. So there are also limits on how to take control over those things. But we have electoral laws and we have guidelines that is stipulated for every state or every polling unit to follow. This should be guiding principle, and this should be what every resident electoral commissioner should follow. And there are also laws that stipulate punishment for erring electoral officials. Any electoral official that violates any policy or any law, there are laws that stipulate punishments for them. Again, like I said, we underestimated the challenges. Again, the cash crunch, the CBN chairman has consistently said they will provide INEC with everything they need. But between you and I visited an area council in Abuja, and one of the EOs actually confirmed that they only got 25% of the cash they needed. And I confirmed it on election day because some of the drivers that refused to move to the polling units, they said they were not paid in cash. One of the drivers particularly told me that he doesn't have a bank account, he has never been to any bank before. Without cash, he cannot move. And then the contract that the INEC had with the National Union of Road Transport Workers, there has been consistent sabotage, even in previous elections. But we keep consistently engaging this NURTW, despite we've seen repeated sabotage. There is one particular driver that told me that the amount given to the NURTW to pay drivers was different from what the NURTW union were offering him, that he was being shortchanged, so he would not move. And this is at 10:30 a.m. in one area council within this Abuja. So if you consistently have this violation of contracts, sabotage, and you consistently go back to the same set of people, logistic issue, then it's cast doubt, and it brings more questions than answers.
All right, so with this challenges observed with the INEC and security agencies so far, do you see it affecting the eventual outcome of these elections?
Again, we are talking about the process now. The process has fallen short of expectations. We as organization, as Yaga Africa, we deployed observers to sample polling units. If the result INEC release it does not reflect the vote cast, to be able to expose it. There are cases where the process is flawed or is falling short of expectations, or manipulation, and those manipulations or those inconsistencies might not be substantial enough to impact on the overall outcome. But if it impacts on the overall outcome and the results we receive from our observers is not consistent with what INEC released at the end of the day, we would have to expose it and tell Nigerians that this does not reflect the vote cast. But if after everything, the result we got from the polling unit is consistent with what INEC released, we would verify the process.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank you most sincerely, Moshood Issa, Communications Officer, Yaga Africa. We thank you for joining us on Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Well, some very interesting, perspective. Said we underestimated our challenges, overestimated capacity, and talked about the fact that I also sense that the cash issue was going to be a problem.
Yes.
Many of these guys, you heard what he said about that driver saying he has they never owned a bank account. He doesn't intend to own anyone in the nearest future.
Yes, I think it was the same with the core members too, who were used by INEC as ad hoc staff. I saw a video of some core members somewhere in Lagos being persuaded by senior INEC officials to at least just go and conduct elections. They were saying they had not gotten any form of incentives, and they were told that there was no money on ground to pay them yet. So imagine if those ones can complain what Mr. Moshood just said about the drivers too. So yes, we did underplay our and it's a problem, for the system generally. I saw one of the tweets of the president in the build up to the election, and he was saying that, well, God willing, by the grace of God, this statement help us to leave things to chance. We just feel that, okay, yes, these are challenges, but we can overcome them. How? Practically. I mean, so we're hiding incompetence, hiding behind God in the name of incompetence,
the results you get.
We must begin to face these things head on. There's no shame in acknowledging weakness, and that for me is the hallmark of maturity and strength. You must acknowledge the fact that I don't have the capacity to solve this. We're still talking about places that are visible. We've not even begun talking about the hinterlands. We've not begun talking about the riverine areas, the coastal areas. The coastal areas. So when reports start coming from those places, you may be shocked as to how things went in those.
That's very true, because where these issues are coming from are proper terrain.
Yes,
I can put it that way. Yes. In the middle of Abuja, for instance, one of our guests told us yesterday how a polling unit that was almost adjacent to an INEC office also started late. And how do you explain that? So perhaps somewhere, and then the driver also refused because they had not gotten cash. And this brings me to the hypocritical nature of some Nigerians and politicians. So when this policy about the cashless matter came about, the political class was divided. Some felt it was going to be in their favor, and they were saying, people will not be able to buy vote. But now we've seen that aside, not buying votes, I was never in support, because I knew it wasn't CBN's responsibility to fight vote buying. Now we've seen the impact on the process itself. Because so you come in waking up one morning and saying you are forcing a policy down the throat of Nigerians. We've seen the impact here, because INEC relies a lot on third-party, stakeholders to achieve a lot.
Third-party stakeholders who are deeply entrenched in the informal sector. So you're now telling, and the Nigerian society is one that has a huge trust deficit.
Yes.
People
want to see what you are promising them before they move. Telling me I'm going to see you tomorrow, do this for me. That does not work here. No. So what are we saying about? What are we talking about? So these are some of the challenges we're talking about. So evident from those neutral folks now who are election observers saying, and he also told him that he got only 25% of the cash he needed. The manager said he's seen videos where officials had to be begging core members to say, please go. You will get the money later. And drivers saying, I've not received the cash promised me.
The question is, how many downfall drivers in Lagos?
The cumulative effect is what we've seen here.
How many of them, even in Osun here, have bank accounts? And you said, we have a trust deficit. People don't believe in the process. Let's even down to the polling units now. I don't want to say that's why there was little or no security presence, but it was obvious that people weren't motivated. I'm not saying that money is the only incentive you have to do your job, but at least you are expending your own resources and energy. There should be some sort of compensation. And the process overall, like he said, there's some hitches that you cannot just overlook. They are not minute. They are not infinitesimal or inconsequential. A small detail can derail the entire process.
All right. Well, so we take another break, and when we return, we'll be joined by other guests in the studio to continue to review the election on Saturday.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Ernest.
on this station.
Nengi Ernest.
On this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
The Korean War of 1950 to 1953 pitched North and South Korea against each other in response to intrigues by nations beyond their border with different interests from those canvassed by the two brother nations. The Korean War had all the nuances of an external conflict induced by powers that were interested in subjugating North and South Korea. Japan had leveraged on its military power to annex Korea in 1900 and imposed a military union that did not sit well with the citizens. Japan not only lost its war of conquest against Korea, all its powers were obliterated by the effect of the World War II. The end of World War II got Korea divided into two nations along 38 parallel lines by the instrumentality of the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. The Korean War lapsed into a Cold War when it stopped the prying eyes of external forces into the internal affairs of a nation now divided along its north and southern territories. Western Spring Television identifies the Korean War as a major event in history.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever is pound.